We're good? Okay. All right. Well, good to see everybody, and welcome to Truth Seekers, our first Tuesday of the month. So it's good to be back. We were just in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and are now back in town. So didn't look at much news for a few days, which is always a good thing to do. It's a good thing to take a sabbatical every once in a while from the craziness of the world. But the world is still crazy. So as one of the things I think is important for us to always talk about our principles of why we are doing Truth Seekers. So just to quickly talk about that, our purpose is to awaken those who do not realize or recognize the heightened spiritual battle we are involved in and the desperate need for spiritual awakening. And along with that, to equip ourselves to engage in the current spiritual battle by putting on the full armor of God. So that's our purpose, and it's kind of what we're going to be talking specifically about the spiritual battle that's going on today. But also just some basic principles that we seek truth through a biblical worldview and a relationship with the one true God, and all of those words are important. It's not a God, it's the one true God, and that we humbly seek that truth, because we do recognize we could be wrong in our human understanding. So we have to be humble in that. Second principle is we are compelled to engage our society and leaders in defense of the truth against any evil ideology designed to sow chaos, division, and destruction. Again, you see the word truth in a lot of these. Obviously, that is one thing that I think that's the one thing that we can control. People ask, what can you do whenever you're in a world that's kind of chaotic? Well, you can make sure that you are seeking truth and then following truth, and that whenever you're trying to hold people accountable, you're holding them accountable to the truth, not just because it's a different ideology from you. The original founding principles found in the Declaration of Independence and Constitution are consistent with and supportive of the truth. They are not the truth in themselves, right? They don't become biblical documents, but we do talk about our country in relationship to what's going on. So we've talked quite a bit about how they do reflect a biblical worldview overall. Liberty is more important than safety or security and reflects a biblical worldview. So liberty is important. But we understand that with liberty, you still have to have order, and and balancing that is something that we spend a lot of time discussing. Our battle is not with our neighbors. We treat all with respect, right? This is a spiritual battle, so those people who disagree with us, we have to resist seeing them as the enemy. Even though they may fall on that side, we have to make sure we're always seeing people as created in the image of God. And then I felt this is important to put in, one, because it's true and we want to do this, but if anyone starts digging into our background, we need to say that we will never perpetrate violence against those who are blinded by an evil ideology, but will actively stand and defend the truth. So that, again, is kind of just a quick refresher of our principles of why we're doing this. And so today I want to dig into a little bit more the fact that this is truly a spiritual battle, and that there are people that are starting to see that. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read an article that the first time I read it, I laughed. And I was like, this is just so stupid. This is ridiculous. And then the second time I read it, I became a little more terrified. It's like, oh my gosh, people are actually believing this. And this is a clear sign that we're in a spiritual battle, and that most people, Christians and non as well, don't recognize that. And a lot of people don't realize they're actually fighting on the evil spiritual side, right? And they would never think that they would do that, but they actually are. And so this is an article that was written, it was published in Time magazine, and the article was called A Case for Making Earth Day a Religious Holiday. So this was written just a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember when Earth Day was. It was just a couple of weeks ago. This was written by two professors. They are obviously environmentalists. One of them was nominally Jewish. This is how they characterized themselves. I don't know, how are you nominally Jewish? I guess so. When it's convenient, you're Jewish. When Hitler comes around, nope, not Jewish. I don't know. I don't know how that works. The other is a recovering Catholic. So that's what he says. So they have a connection with religion. I'm actually going to read a lot of this article, the second half of the article, but it starts off, it says, if the Super Bowl is America's unofficial national day of celebration, Earth Day is the collective yawn that brings a shrug. So I thought it was interesting, one, that it connects how much energy we put into the Super Bowl, but we neglect Earth Day. As Christians, I've heard the analogy, look at how many people will come to a Super Bowl party but won't come to church, right? Kind of making a false comparison, but kind of making that comparison. Look how much people love this silly game but don't take this religion seriously. Well, they are clearly starting to talk in religious type examples here. It says, so on this 53rd Earth Day, I don't know if you knew that, this last one was the 53rd, we thought it useful to pose what a real Earth Day should represent and how it could form a central time for a new approach to worship. All right, that would be red flag number one at least. And then it talks about some of the good things that have happened since Earth Day came around, and there actually are some. Pollution, we're not as polluted. And I think we can all acknowledge that. Now, whether it was because of these activists or because technology increased, but maybe a combination. Then it gets down, it says, but Earth Day may have fallen to a victim of its own success. As used to, people actually cared about it. People would go and protest on Earth Day, and they're bemoaning the fact that no one seems to care about Earth Day anymore. It says, even though we face new and seemingly overwhelming environmental issues, the extinction crisis, the toxic chemical crisis, the climate crisis, the acidification of the seas crisis, and the plastics tsunami. Okay? The spirit of the day is no longer mass protest, yet current environmental problems pose existential threats to planetary and societal stability, even to civilization itself. One day out of 365 to mark the entire planet is too far a cry from the reverence and recognition owed to the beleaguered planetary basis for our entire existence, for all known life. Now, that's a pretty heavy and intense view, but that's where they're coming from. Right? So, it says, what would an earth-reverent belief system look like with Earth Day as its center? So now they're getting into kind of this new religion from what they see. And it says, to begin with, let's take a look at what the established religions get right and where we may take a cue. Perhaps the first step might be unearthing the nature-centered origins of our existing religious holidays. Most of us know in the back of our minds that Christmas and Hanukkah fall around the time of the winter solstice. Easter and Passover are celebrated in tandem with the arrival of spring. That Sukkot, that's Jewish, and Diwali, I believe is Hindu, mark harvest and the summer's last warmth. And the Eid, which is Muslim, follows the path of the moon. These holidays have origins in gratitude. Gratitude for the sun returning, gratitude for the harvest that could avert the starvation winter might bring. Thanks for when it did avert it. We could conceivably reframe these holidays as days of thanks for what the natural world gives and reminders that our responsibility for what remains is an ongoing covenant. Okay. Now, again, they think this is new. Oh, okay. Next, we might look at what religions do to help us form community and mark life's important benchmarks: birth, maturity, marriage, and death. What if we were to come to celebrate these benchmarks for what they are biologically? Birth. Now, this gets a little scientific, but I think I'm pronouncing all this stuff right. Birth, that ecstatic co-joining of atoms and molecules resulting in sentience, might prompt a ritual of truthfully and factually recounting how inanimate becomes animate, instead of or in addition to the bar mitzvahs and confirmations. Would it be too much to expect our children to go beyond the average daily 20 minutes most American children spend outdoors and commit to memory the names and descriptions of local plants and animals, or learn the considerations involved in correctly planting a tree? Again, you're hearing it for the first time. You're laughing. This is my third time. I am deeply concerned. The covenant of marriage might be an opportunity to remind young couples to consider the burden children place upon the planet and to make vows of sustainable patterns of behavior going forward. Death, finally, might be recognized for what it is, a returning of atoms and molecules to the cycle. In the cycle of life, the coming apart is as miraculous a process as the joining. We still don't really know how nothing became something and formed a universe in which random pulses of energy and matter coalesced into beings writing op-eds. In short, there's plenty of mystery to go around. Lastly, we might just need a book. Man, it's like they're taking a religious paradigm to this. The Jewish Torah wraps around the year nicely. From the Simchat Torah to the next, kind of the whole year-long cycle. When we complete the annual reading of the story and start all over again in the same service, creating the feeling of a hermetic year, what if a book like that existed for the earth? What if it were replete with hymns to the world of the living? What if it contained the stories of the prophets of natural earth knowledge, Darwin and Carson, Galileo and Humboldt? I hope I don't get struck down by reading this on this, but I think God understands. What if we came to mark those discoveries as the gradual opening of consciousness to the laws of nature? What if our Bible of the natural world reinforced that a multiplicity of processes and phenomena still remain to be discovered? What if we use that book not to scold our children into following commandments, but rather to light a path forward that encourage discovery and reverence and gratitude for the relationships that are this planetary spaceship's life support? Are we proposing a whole new religion? We're not quite sure. Maybe an old one. The core of all religious feeling is the sense that we are part of something much larger in space and deeper in time than ourselves. The world is certainly that. At any rate, we do not know that spiritual inquiry, just like scientific inquiry is not static. Likewise, a whole new continent of scientific knowledge has been revealed to us since America's first and second religious great awakenings. It seems perfectly reasonable and spiritual to us that in a new great awakening, this new knowledge continent be incorporated into a progressive wisdom of life, death, and the universe. In short, we must make that many people seek nature in parks or on a dreamt-of photo safari. In a world of commodification, we presume nature must be a commodity accessible by transaction. We're accustomed to thinking that just as cornflakes can be found in the cereal aisle, nature is stocked in places like Yellowstone. But nature isn't just a place, and it shouldn't be relegated to one box on the same calendar where pick up your dry cleaning gets more ink. We've got to convey to everyone that the planet whose rotation and revolution creates all 365 days is worthy of recognition that spans all 365. Recognition of the planet was born in protest. Now, you read that a couple of times, and it becomes really dark and disturbing. Again, we read stuff like this, and my initial reaction was